When I crossed the 1,000-day mark without touching alcohol, it felt almost unreal. 3 years of saying no to something that once shaped my weekends, influenced my decisions, and disguised itself as a harmless habit, I never expected that removing one substance from my life would become the single most powerful self-development decision I would ever make. It wasn't about joining some strict sobriety movement or preaching to anyone else. I simply noticed that life kept improving in ways I never saw coming, and I wanted to understand why. Looking back now, I've built multiple businesses, invested in property, traveled more than I ever imagined, and learned things about myself that drinking had quietly kept hidden. All of these transformations began the very moment alcohol stopped being a part of my identity. One of the earliest surprises was how much more capable I felt. It wasn't only about reclaiming the mornings I used to waste or avoiding the foggy emptiness after a night out. It was the mental clarity that returned almost instantly. My focus stopped fragmenting every few minutes, and I could sit down, lock into one task, and stay with it for hours without my brain wandering. It struck me how much attention I had been sacrificing without realizing it. Alcohol steals energy in a subtle way, not just on the night you drink, but on the day after, and sometimes even longer by removing it. I discovered how efficient I could be when my mind wasn't constantly recovering from internal chaos. That boost in productivity didn't just increase what I could achieve. It made me genuinely happier. Feeling myself make progress day after day created a sense of momentum I hadn't felt since childhood. Another thing I never expected was how people reacted when I mentioned I stopped drinking. It's strange how society treats alcohol like a requirement instead of a choice. You tell someone you've quit cigarettes and they congratulate you. You say you're done with alcohol, and suddenly people assume you must have some dark past or dangerous dependency. There's almost disbelief in their eyes, like no one would willingly walk away from something so normal. Some people joke about it to hide their discomfort. Others act overly sympathetic, as if you've suffered a tragedy. The funny thing is, both reactions fade once people see you're simply living your life. Over time, I stopped caring about their assumptions because I realized their comments had nothing to do with me and everything to do with their own habits. But the most eye-opening shift happened in social situations. Alcohol had been quietly holding my confidence hostage without me realizing it. On nights out, everyone carries themselves with more boldness, more ease, more social energy. I assumed that meant people were naturally outgoing. It took sobriety to show me that a lot of what we call confidence is really just a chemical reaction. Without alcohol, I had no choice but to rely on my own personality. I had to approach people, start conversations, and express myself without the liquid shortcut that once made everything easier. It was uncomfortable at first, but eventually it forged a real, unshakable confidence. The kind that doesn't disappear when the glass is empty. I trained my social instincts in real conditions, and that growth stayed with me permanently. Dating was another area I hadn't prepared for. Most first encounters happen with drinks in hand, and when you don't participate, the dynamic shifts instantly. Some people felt uneasy sitting across from someone who wasn't drinking. It made them more aware of their own nervousness, and for a few, that was too uncomfortable. I noticed how much some people relied on alcohol to ease tension or fill silence. Those dates rarely went anywhere. But there were others who found sobriety attractive, not because it made me special, but because it signaled discipline and direction. To them, it showed I valued long-term goals over short-term comfort. Eventually, I realized that the people who were put off by sobriety were never aligned with me in the first place. I didn't want to build a life with someone who needed artificial confidence just to spend time with me. Sobriety ended up filtering people for me, revealing who genuinely matched my path. One of the biggest breakthroughs was how much easier habit building became. Creating a new routine is already hard, but doing it while nursing hangovers is almost impossible. When you wake up exhausted or nauseous, you're not thinking about morning meditation or hitting a workout. Alcohol disrupts consistency, and consistency is the foundation of every meaningful change. Once hangovers disappeared, I finally had stable days, predictable mornings, and the mental bandwidth to stick with new behaviors long enough for them to become automatic. The meditation habit I started during my early sober phase years ago is something I still practice, because sobriety gave me the structure to build it properly. One decision removed the friction that had been sabotaging every other habit. Sleep was another transformation I expected, but not at the level it actually improved. Everyone knows you feel terrible after a late night of drinking, even if you get 10 hours of sleep afterward. But long-term alcohol use affects sleep cycles in deeper ways. It disrupts REM phases, causes your heart rate to stay elevated, and creates shallow, restless nights. Once alcohol was gone, my sleep began repairing itself. I woke up feeling genuinely restored instead of just not tired. Even though I still worked into the early hours many nights, the quality of whatever sleep I managed was significantly better. It made my mind sharper, my mood steadier, and my days more productive. Sleep wasn't the magic fix, but it magnified every improvement I was already experiencing. One unexpected benefit was the dramatic drop in awful decisions. Alcohol has a way of lowering your guard and convincing you things are harmless, funny, or not a big deal. But those impulsive choices accumulate regret. People argue with loved ones, break things, say what they shouldn't, cheat, lose valuables, or get into risky situations. And the next day, they blame the alcohol, as if that removes the responsibility. When I quit drinking, the chaos stopped. I could look at my actions clearly and own them. If I made a mistake, it was fully mine, which meant I was able to actually learn from it. The cycle of do something dumb, apologize, repeat, finally ended because I wasn't creating avoidable disasters every couple of weekends. Money was another area that changed massively. I expected to save money from not buying drinks, avoiding after-party food, or skipping expensive nights out. But what shocked me was how quitting drinking didn't just reduce my spending, it increased my earning potential. Because I had more time, more focus, and more energy, I began working better, thinking bigger, and going after opportunities I used to procrastinate on. My financial growth wasn't just from saving, it was from expanding what I was capable of. The productivity snowballed, and eventually I was outworking people around me without feeling burned out. Sobriety didn't just clear my head, it gave me a competitive advantage. Another subtle shift was how my relationships evolved. When you remove alcohol, you quickly discover who your real friends are. I started noticing that some people I thought I was close with weren't actually friends. We were just familiar strangers who happened to get drunk in the same rooms, take away the drinks. And suddenly there wasn't much left to talk about. Some of those connections faded naturally, and I didn't fight to keep them alive. If someone only enjoys your company when you're sabotaging yourself, they're not someone you need long term. The people who truly cared understood my reasons and stayed close. I learned that if you can only tolerate someone when you're drunk, the problem isn't sobriety, it's the relationship itself. But the most mind-blowing change was the mental sharpness that returned. I always thought I was already operating at a high level, but after a few months without alcohol, it felt like a curtain lifted inside my head. My memory, creativity, and quick thinking improved in ways I didn't even know I needed. It felt like someone wiped dust off a lens I didn't realize was blurry. I didn't know how much my mind was holding back just to process the remnants of constant drinking. Whether it was because of better sleep, better habits, or a calmer nervous system. What mattered is that life felt clearer, brighter, and more mentally spacious. Part 2 will continue from here, with the remaining lessons, the emotional shifts, the changes in integrity, the deeper self-awareness, and the final realization that stopping alcohol doesn't just remove something from your life. It gives you everything you didn't know you were missing. As the months passed, the mental clarity I gained wasn't just a temporary improvement. It became the new baseline. My thinking sharpened in ways I didn't expect. I remembered conversations more clearly, solved problems faster, and expressed ideas with more accuracy. It felt as if layers of fog were dissolving from my mind, one by one. I always assumed I was already functioning near my peak. But removing alcohol revealed how much potential had been quietly muffled. And this wasn't some dramatic overnight transformation. It was gradual, subtle, and incredibly powerful. The longer I lived sober, the more I realized how many years I had spent operating on reduced battery without even noticing. Sobriety wasn't just giving me mental clarity, it was giving me my full brain back. The deeper my clarity grew, the more stable my emotions became. It took me a long time to understand that a hangover is basically a short-term, chemically induced crash. I had gotten so used to those emotional dips that I unconsciously accepted them as part of my personality. I thought I was simply someone who had waves of low mood or random anxiety. But once alcohol disappeared, those artificial crashes disappeared too. I learned what my natural emotional baseline actually looked like. It wasn't perfect, but it was steady. Challenges still happened, stress still surfaced. But I wasn't fighting against a self-inflicted downward spiral anymore. My resilience strengthened because I stopped knocking myself down every couple of weeks. I wasn't dragging my mental state through cycles of self-made chaos. Life didn't magically become easier. I just stopped making it harder. Another unexpected shift was how much my sense of integrity evolved. Without alcohol to blame for impulsive moments or questionable decisions, every choice became fully mine. I couldn't say, I only did that because I was drunk. If I behaved poorly, reacted badly, or made a mistake, I had to look at it directly and ask myself why sobriety forced me to confront the parts of myself I used to gloss over. I became more honest with myself, more aware of my motivations, and more responsible for the outcomes of my actions. Over time, I developed a stronger internal standard. I didn't want to treat people carelessly or create problems I would later regret. I wanted to be someone I respected, someone who acted intentionally instead of emotionally stumbling through life. Alcohol had been giving me an easy way out, and removing it forced me to grow into someone more grounded, more self-aware, and more aligned with the person I wished I was. As my integrity grew, something else surprising happened. My self-respect deepened. When you're stuck in a loop of drinking and recovering, you unintentionally send messages to yourself that you can't rely on your own discipline, that you don't fully control your habits, and that your goals can wait until tomorrow. Over and over again, you reinforce the belief that comfort comes before intention. When I stopped drinking, every day without alcohol became a small promise kept to myself. One day turned into 10, 10 into 100. And those hundreds eventually reached 1,000. Every streak strengthened the belief that I could trust myself. And the ability to trust yourself is one of the greatest sources of confidence you can ever have. It didn't feel like I was restricting my life. It felt like I was reclaiming it. The longer I stayed sober, the more I noticed subtle benefits I hadn't even considered. My patience increased. My reaction slowed in a good way, and I stopped feeling rushed or overwhelmed by minor inconveniences. My nervous system felt calmer. Tiny stressors that once irritated me just slid off. I didn't feel the same tension in my chest or restlessness in my mind. This wasn't because life suddenly stopped being stressful. It was because alcohol had been amplifying stress hormones and disrupting my mood more than I realized. Sobriety gave my body a chance to regulate itself properly for the first time in years. And then there was the physical side. Not the obvious stuff like clearer skin or fewer bloated mornings, though those happened too, but the subtle physical awareness I regained. When you drink regularly, even socially, your system gets used to processing a toxin so often that you forget what it feels like to run clean. I didn't understand how sluggish my body felt until that sluggishness disappeared. My digestion improved, my appetite balanced out, my inflammation lowered, even my workouts felt different. Like my muscles were responding with more strength, more coordination, more stamina. You don't realize how much alcohol weighs you down until the weight is gone. As this transformation continued, it became clearer that alcohol had been numbing more than just my emotions. It had been numbing my self-awareness. When you stop numbing yourself, you start noticing your real triggers, your real desires, your real frustrations. I became more attentive to what drained me, what energized me, and what environments were good or bad for my growth. I noticed when I needed rest, when I needed challenge, and when I needed connection. Sobriety made me more intuitive with my own life. It turned down the noise so I could finally hear myself clearly. Another major shift was how much more intentional my social life became. I only spent time with people whose presence felt meaningful, whose energy uplifted me, and whose goals aligned with mine. My conversations changed, my environment changed, and the quality of my interactions improved dramatically. Instead of chasing the high of a loud night out, I began valuing deeper connections, real conversations, and shared purpose. I realized how many of my old friendships had been built entirely around mutual distraction, not actual compatibility. Removing alcohol revealed who truly fit into my life and who had only been filling space. As my relationships improved, my time became more precious. I stopped wasting days recovering, and suddenly there was so much room to grow. I used that time to create, to work, to travel, to build, to learn. Sobriety didn't just give me hours back. It gave me access to the version of myself who actually uses those hours well. I accomplished things that would have felt impossible in my old lifestyle, simply because I stopped trading my clarity for temporary fun. That trade had never been worth it, but I'd been too deep in the cycle to see it. Eventually, I reached a point where I felt proud of who I had become. Not because I was perfect or because I had everything figured out, but because I had chosen a path that required discipline, intention, and self-respect. I stopped settling for the numb version of myself and committed to the clear one. And that clarity unlocked things I didn't even know I was capable of. New opportunities, deeper self-knowledge, stronger relationships, better decisions, more ambition, more fulfillment. It wasn't the absence of alcohol that changed my life. It was everything that sobriety allowed me to build. The most surprising realization was that I never actually had a bad relationship with alcohol. I wasn't the person who hit rock bottom. I wasn't drinking every day. I wasn't in dangerous territory. I was the normal drinker. The occasional party night, the weekend drinks with friends, the casual celebrations. And yet stopping made my life expand in every direction. It taught me that you don't need a dramatic problem with alcohol for alcohol to be holding you back. You don't know how much better life could be until you remove the thing that's constantly dulling your edges. Looking back now, I don't feel like I gave anything up. I feel like I finally stopped living on a dimmer switch. Stopping drinking didn't shrink my life, it made everything bigger. My confidence grew, my discipline improved, my relationships matured, and my achievements accelerated. It gave me emotional stability, sharper thinking, deeper self-respect, and a sense of control I had never experienced before. It made me more balanced, more ambitious, more grounded, and far more capable of becoming the person I always wanted to become. You don't have to choose sobriety. No one can make that choice for you. But I can tell you this. If you ever try it, really try it, long enough to let the benefits compound, you may discover a version of yourself you didn't even know existed, and that version might just change your entire life.